with you Sinclair Brodie McMillan shortbread recipe and how to make that. So Sinclair Brodie McMillan was my grandmother. When I was about 12, she taught me how to make shortbread. McMillan's family, the Brodies, all came to Birmingham, Alabama from Scotland. Shortbread was a big part of our Christmas celebration. When I was about 12, Mama brought me and my friend Mary up to her house and taught us how to make shortbread. I've shared it with many of my family members, how to make it. I share my shortbread with a number of people, and I wanted to show you the process so that everybody can start making their own shortbread. Shortbread has 3 ingredients: sifted flour, butter, and sugar. Now I'm going to show you the process of putting the ingredients together. First, I'm going to put the sugar in the mixing bowl. That's a half a cup of sugar, 2 sticks of butter that's softened. You can see this is pretty soft, but you want to make sure that you get all of it. Mama Nell, she could just take the bowl and get all the batter out of there, and there was nothing left. Okay, I'm going to lower the blades into the bowl and start the mixing. Now that the butter and sugar are creamed, we're going to start adding the flour. So I'm going to turn the mixer on and you'll see me add the flour. I've added 2 1/4 cups of sifted flour to the creamed butter and sugar, and we're getting a pretty good consistency in the dough. And I believe we're ready to take it to the manual mode. We're going to quit using the mixer and finish up by hand. The dough is really starting to form into a ball, but we really want to get it where it's a stiff enough ball that it just cleans the bowl of all dough and flour, and the bowl looks very clean. So even though the recipe says 2 1/4 cups of flour, by hand you continue adding a little bit. This is a 1/4 cup measuring, so I'm putting about a 1/4 cup more in there, and I'm going to start working it with my hands. One thing about making shortbread is you always have to make sure that your hands are clean. This part gets a little messy, but it's essential to really having a good dough ball. And being able to form the shortbread comes out at the right consistency as a cookie. I can remember when I was only 12, my grandmother would walk over to the bowl. She'd say, not quite enough, and I'd have to keep going with a little bit more flour and a little bit more work, elbow grease, and getting this dough just right. The dough is wiped the bowl clean. Got a nice good cookie dough ball here. We'll put it out here and you can see it. Don't usually do that when I do it myself, but you'll be able to see what's happening here. So we got a nice good dough ball. And the trick is to really making good shortbread is having that dough ball that's hanging together, not too wet, not too dry, cleans the bowl. The next step is I'm going to pull over this little square 8x8 pan, and the 8x8 pan is we're going to form the shortbread into a ball and press it into a square into the pan. So I first start by pressing with my hands and just moving the dough out to the corners. This pan is lined with wax paper. That's essential to being able to get the dough out of the pan. And my grandmother cut her shortbread into little squares. That's what I'm going to do. That way, instead of using a cookie cutter, if you really wanted to use a cookie cutter, you could. I like the squares myself. That's the tradition in the McMillan household, so I've just stuck with the tradition. Right now I have the dough pressed into the pan, worked it out to the corners. I'm going to fold the wax paper over and all around the edges. Then I'm going to take this other piece of wax paper and lay it right in the center to cover it so the dough is covered. And then I'm going to use this other square pan to really press it down. You might want to, if you have two pans the same size, that's probably the easiest way to get your dough to press down and press it into the pan. But I don't have that today, so I'm using this, and actually it's working pretty good for us. So I'm going to move it around a little bit more. But we got a nice formed shortbread. The dough is nicely molded into this 8 by 8 inch pan. I'm going to take it, and I have a piece of wax paper down here. Got it dumped out. Now my grandmother was very precise with this. She used a ruler to cut her shortbread. I'm pretty precise too. Most of the time I have a little template that I put under my wax paper here so that I can actually see where I'm making my cuts. But I'm not doing that today. I'm going to eyeball it. You can eyeball it. But one thing I've found that is a serrated knife makes it a lot easier. Sort of a bread knife. It's long. And then I start making little 1-inch cuts. See if I can sort of judge that as I go along. And I'll cut all the way across here. And see if I can get it straight. This template helps. Okay. And then I start cutting the other way. Getting my nice little, maybe square, slightly rectangular pieces of shortbread. It's a pretty rich cookie, so a small piece goes a long way. Although I know quite a few people that eat a lot of small pieces when they get to the shortbread. And here we go. So we have our nice little cuts. Right, I have a cookie sheet with a piece of brown paper on it. This is brown paper, grocery sack paper, grocery bag paper, so that it's going to absorb a lot of the butter as the shortbread cooks. So you can't use parchment paper. I believe you'd be flooded out. So here we go with taking up the cookies, starting to put them on the sheet, and just making sure they've got a lot of room. They won't spread, they'll hold their square shape. So just giving them a little bit of room in between as I lay out this batch. The cookies on this end are a little bit larger. So I'm going to put a few of those down. Our oven's getting ready for the 325 degrees that it needs to be. Ready to put our cookies in a 325 degree oven, and I'm going to chime this for about 23 minutes. Okay, the cookies are out of the oven, and I'm going to push them all to the center where they're really close to each other. Get a little bit warm, so be careful. And once I've got them in a bunch, I'm going to sprinkle a little sugar on them. So shortbread needs a little sugar on top, not enough sugar inside, so have to sweeten it up a little more. And then the next step is I'm going to move them over here to the other rack and start taking them off. One thing you have to remember, if you leave them on the cookie sheet, they're going to keep cooking. So you can see these are already brown on the bottom. We don't want them any browner than this. You'll learn your oven and how long it takes to cook. 23 to 25 minutes is about what I experienced. These were in the oven for 23 minutes. and the recipe says 23 to 28 minutes. So here's the shortbread. Let me turn these little ones over. So nice little cookies, a nice little snack, a great Christmas gift. It's all about the holidays with my family. Shortbread is the holidays. Shortbread for my family is all about Christmas and the holidays. I can remember my grandmother bringing shortbread at Christmas time. I do this for my family. I make shortbread for my friends. And one thing I can guarantee, if you develop your shortbread skills, you will have a growing list of friends.